Hey y'all, CompleteIndie here. So, since today is the 25th anniversary of Super Mario 64, I figured now is a better time than any to sit down and finally beat this game, so I can see what all the love is about. You know, I really don't see the appeal. Since I have never even beaten the first level of Super Mario 64, instead I'll celebrate the 25th anniversary of the N64 itself. The Nintendo 64, which came out on June 23rd, 1996, was Nintendo's first foray into 3D gaming. And with it, launched Super Mario 64, Pilotwing 64, and literally nothing else that's not even a bit. 2 games, 3 if you lived in Japan, 4 if you lived in Europe, not that any of those games beyond the first 2 are all that memorable. And that kind of rough start at launch was very much a sign that hurt the N64. Remember, 3D game development was new at the time, and the PlayStation 1, the N64's main competitor, was just more powerful. So, in the end, the N64 has a somewhat infamous library when it comes to quantity, but where it lacks in variety and quantity, it makes up for in quality. Some of the best games ever, especially for the time, were N64 games, and many of them either hold up today or at least well-respected games that people still enjoy. There's third-party titles like GoldenEye 007, Banjo-Kazooie, and Perfect Dark, as well as a ton of first-party titles. Beyond Super Mario 64, we got 2 different Zelda, the first Smash Bros., and even a personal favorite of mine, the original Paper Mario. So, I had an idea. The NES Classic Edition, which launched in 2016 with 30 different games, was a wild success. Wild enough to result in the Super NES Classic Edition with 20 games. And so, if I were Nintendo, I would be capitalizing on this anniversary to unveil the brand new Nintendo 64 Classic Edition. In this video, I will be limiting myself to 15 games. While that is less than the SNES Classic Edition, not only does the N64 have that aforementioned library issue, but also these games are bigger in file size than the SNES games were. Additionally, I will be limiting myself to games that were published by Nintendo themselves. There is too much licensing any other way for the main titles that would make this collection somewhat unrealistic. So, without further ado, let's do this. I'll be going in alphabetical order just like the current classic editions do. Starting us off is Donkey Kong 64. Now, full transparency, this wouldn't be my first pick. I would have used Banjo-Kazooie, who wouldn't? However, Banjo-Kazooie is owned by Rare, which is owned by Microsoft. That's not the most realistic. So instead, Donkey Kong 64. A game created by Rare, but one that Nintendo owns the rights to. This game was critically acclaimed, and while it wasn't all glowing reviews, many people do like the game. It has a decent amount of content, collectibles, and overall is a really solid single-player experience to represent the N64. Next is F-Zero X. Praised for having fast gameplay, a ton of different courses and vehicles, good track design, and keeping a pretty high frame rate, F-Zero X is a beloved entry in the F-Zero franchise and is also a beloved game from the N64 era. Additionally, many people of my generation haven't played F-Zero at all, so I'm including it to give this series some long overdue love. Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards. This game is a much lower difficulty than some of the other games on the list, and serves as something akin to a more traditional 2D platformer, albeit using 3D graphics. This game has both single-player and multiplayer modes, and it serves as a much more casual, laid-back adventure game compared to some of the other games I'm mentioning. And as someone who's terrible at platformers, I can speak firsthand that there should be some platforms that even I can beat. In a similar vein to including F-Zero X, we'll also be including Mario Kart 64. This one is one of the more well-known among its generation, and that could be important, and it's a fun multiplayer experience. It starred some of the most iconic features of the Mario Kart series, including the blue shell. I said iconic, not loved, and was well received by both critics and casual players alike in regards to its multiplayer mode. Mario Party is a beloved Mario series known for being a fun party game, and we have 3 different Mario Parties available for the N64. Out of those 3, Mario Party 2 is often regarded as the best entry of the 3, if not the whole series. The N64 was a very multiplayer-oriented console, and this feels like a great way to show it off with one of the best multiplayer games of all time. For what it's worth, since Mario Party 3 is often a very well-respected entry in the series as well, that one would also be getting in. The original Mario Party isn't, mainly because it caused too many problems with some of its minigames. Paper Mario. I'm a bit biased towards this game, yes, it's my favorite N64 game, one of my favorite RPGs ever, but that's exactly it. The N64 is lacking in RPG titles, focusing more on platforms and racing games, so an RPG, even one that's a bit unorthodox such as Paper Mario, is a great idea. It has great characters, great humor, great world design, great gameplay. This game is great and feels like a must-have. Pilotwing 64, the sequel to You guessed it, SNES's Pilotwings is a 3D flight sim where you have to do a bunch of missions involving different types of planes and air sports. This game was primarily chosen because it was one of the N64's 2 international launch titles, but also because it's arguably the biggest simulator game on the N64. Pokemon Stadium would have been a cool decision if not for the fact that the game heavily focused on moving Pokemon between your Game Boy games and the N64, which feels like a difficult feature to implement on a Classic Edition. Instead, we'll be doing Pokemon Snap. This game was beloved, and it serves as a surprisingly unique entry in the Pokemon series, being a photography game, an on-rails shooter game akin to Star Fox, but as a much more passive, laid-back experience than flying through space in combat. Speaking of, Star Fox. A much more traditional shooter game than Pokemon Snap, the best-selling Star Fox, one of the best-selling N64 games, and even revered by many as one of the best video games of all time. Star Fox 64 is just an automatic inclusion. Plus, just like F-Zero before it, Star Fox hasn't received a ton of love in recent history, so this could really be a chance to introduce it to people who haven't heard of it before. You all saw this one coming, how could I not? Super Mario 64 was Mario's 3D debut. It was one of the 2 launch titles for the N64, and it's iconic to put it lightly. This game revolutionized not just the Mario series, but gaming as a whole. This set a new limit, it raised the bar for years to come, and it was a key entry in video game history. With good music, iconic level designs, and more, Super Mario 64 is just an obvious inclusion for the N64 Classic Edition. In this day and age, we're used to giant rosters where over 80 iconic characters from gaming history can duke it out, but when it all started, it wasn't anywhere close to that. Super Smash Bros., the original one. 12 characters, 9 stages, it's a humble beginning to one of Nintendo's best franchises. So including it, just like some of the other games on this list, feels less like a choice, more like a requirement that doesn't make it any worse. For the next 2 games, I'll actually talk about them both, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. The N64 managed to get not 1, but 2 mainstream Zelda titles, both of which are well loved by many. Ocarina of Time follows a more traditional gameplay style, where Link has to fight off Ganondorf, whereas Majora's Mask is a bit better known for feeling like an odd entry in the Zelda series, but no less beloved. Both games have their fans, and are beloved games that, for many, define the N64 era. And finally, Wave Race 64. While I considered Excitebike 64, Wave Race 64 was better. We already have F-Zero X and Mario Kart 64 on the system, 2 types of ground vehicles, so to have some extra diversity, why not Wave Race 64, which focused a bit more on water vehicles like jet skis. Well received by the public, it was once even considered the best racing game of all time, and it most certainly does have its fans. So there you have it. I imagined this console would come with 2 controllers due to its heavy focus on multiplayer games, but I could be very wrong about that. But no matter how you look at it, there's no denying that the N64 library, while at times may feel lacking, is known for keeping a consistently high quality, a focus on fun multiplayer games, and overall was an important console in revolutionizing gaming. Now if you don't mind, I'm gonna finally beat Mario 64. Yeah, still not doing it for me.